was interviewing again another freelance journalist, and she was saying to me, with the journalism that we have to do, and I went, pardon? She went, your journalism. She went, we call it journalism because they're having to churn the stories out. I went, because I just said, do you mean journalism? She went, no, journalism. I'm like, oh my God, because they're under so much pressure. So their jobs are so much busier than they used to be, like you say. So yes, help them out as much as you can. Be time specific, be topical, get to the point and put all your details there. Absolutely.
This is the Ideas Lab podcast, where you can learn from great creative and entrepreneurial minds how to turn your ideas into original businesses, books, and brands. Because in a crowded world, it pays to stand out. This is your host, John Williams, best-selling author and founder of the Ideas Lab London. Rachael Taplin founded and ran her own magazine for 4 years, and in the process learned a lot about the media and about PR. Now she runs Media Matchmaker, which helps entrepreneurs to get their stories into the press and media. If you can crack the code of doing your own PR successfully, then you can get an enormous amount of publicity absolutely free of charge. But most of us, when we start out doing our own PR, make a hash of it, and we don't think about what you really need to do to get a successful press release out there. So I asked Rachael to come in and explain the 3 biggest mistakes we make when we first try to do our own PR and what makes a really great press release. So hi, Rachael. I'm really pleased you could join us. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks for having me, John.
Now, I'd love to know more about how to get our press releases into the media, because this is such a powerful thing if you can do it right. It's basically like free advertising. You get in a major publication, you pay nothing for it, and you get, a whole bunch of people knowing about you and possibly coming to your site and doing business with you. But people get this catastrophically wrong, don't they? So I think it would be a good thing. We were having a little chat earlier and we thought 3 things that we could talk about that people get wrong. And you said one of the key things is that the media has changed a lot recently. Is that how you would put it?
Yeah, it has. I think it's changed the way they're reporting the news, and obviously the way we're consuming the news has changed as well. And it's mostly down to the fact that there are so many online influencers now. All the traditional media outlets, like even the radio or TV, have an online presence as well. So they want content. And what's happening, as we know, should I say, we're always on social media. Our attention span is a lot shorter. So the media has had to adapt really to it. So what tends to happen now is a lot of journalists are very reactive to the news rather than proactive. So we are almost dictating the media now ourselves in what we like to consume and what we like to read. So the way we consume the news, so if a top tip for you is if you want to kind of get an idea on how to approach PR or where to start with it, see what's trending in the news stories, because that's exactly what journalists do. They sit down in the morning, and producers for radio stations, they see, right, what stories are trending and how can we relate them to our industry or to our region.
Right. So that means that, if you can get on the back of something that's got a massive buzz, then you can get a much better result.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, obviously, if you're, for example, to give you an example, and this is true, if you just want regional coverage or you'd like to get regional coverage in your area, BBC radio stations are 60% talk to 40% music. And a radio producer would sit down a couple of hours before they start the programme, not because they're being lazy or because they just leave it to the last minute, they're because they want to be topical. And they'll say, right, what are the trending stories and how can we reflect that from a regional point of view? Then they'll try and find the experts. So if you know there's something breaking news story, whether you're a relationship coach and a top celebrity's just broken up, or something's gone on with the bank or cyber attack or something, and you can comment, it'd be great for you to go to your regional or even your online media that can report the media really quickly and say, look, I'm available for comment if I can help you in any way.
Oh, that's a good move. I like that. Okay, so an interesting example, I guess, would be right now what everyone's obsessed with, and the time this going out, is Brexit. So you can draw all sorts of examples from that, I guess, where you could say, well, okay, this is about, obviously, if you're involved with politics and stuff, that would be good. But negotiation, if I've got a friend who wrote a book about negotiation, teaches that in corporations. Brilliant time to come in and say something about the EU and about what Boris Johnson's trying to do, but I'm sure you can find lots of other threads as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. But what you've always got to try and remember is, what's the point of PR for you? What is it you're trying to get out of it? So make sure that your story matches your audience. So if you're going to start talking about negotiation, is that going to really work on your local BBC radio station? Whereas it might be perfect for a B2B online blog or influencer that can talk about negotiation because it's like a topical subject that reaches your target audience. So always bear in mind, what is it you're trying to get out of your PR? Who is your audience? And that's where you should be looking to get your media coverage placed. So it's not, PR isn't about ego. It's about making sure you've got the end goal in mind.
And well, that brings us on, that it's closely related to the topic of what you put in your press release. And people do get this terribly wrong, don't they? So this is our second kind of terrible mistake that we all typically make when we first try and do PR for ourselves. What is it? Yeah. What do people get wrong?
It's the number one mistake that people get wrong. And actually, what is really comforting with this is I had a press release come in because I sometimes help private clients from a big corporate, and I mean big, very recognized corporate company. And they did exactly this mistake. So they are going to be headlining at an event that I'm speaking at as well. I'm holding a Meet the Journalist event, and there's going to be 5,000 business owners there. So they kind of sent a story to start promoting what they were doing. And all they did was send the story to say, we're going to be at the event, and this, we're on this stand, come and see us. It's not, even though they're a big corporate company, it's not a story. So the big mistake they make is most people write an advert, because let's face it, it's part of our marketing strategy, and so it should be, but we really want them to promote us, don't we? We want them to promote our business and what we do, and ideally an offer. But that's advertising, that's very logical. PR has to be an emotional connection. It's about sharing something vulnerable, whether it doesn't have to be a vulnerable story, but it has to be something that's going to be emotionally connecting to the audience. So always try and remember, PR tells a story, advertising sells your business. So PR tells, advertising sells. And that's the number one mistake people get wrong. And they don't know how to make it different. It's a logical thing, advertising is, and PR is an emotional connection. So if, let's say, your business has been in 10 years and you just wanted to celebrate it was in 10 years, it's not really a great story, from either radio or TV. They want to know what's changed in those 10 years, how technology has advanced, the fact that the caretaker is now the director. They want that emotional connection behind the story. So think about, what have you got that you can talk about? And these might be your success stories. There might be case studies that you've got, testimonials that you've had, or literally just how the industry's changed, like I'm talking now about how journalists and the stories change. So I'm not going to talk about, what I do as a service, and hopefully the fact that you connect, then you want to. And that's how PR works. Right.
Okay. That's smart. So you've got to find an angle that makes it an interesting story. Because if you think about it, if we put ourselves in the reader's point of view, we don't really enjoy reading people's adverts unless we're on the hunt for that exact product or something, and we're in the final stages of making a purchase choice. But other than that, what we want when we're reading a newspaper or magazine is to be informed and to be entertained and surprised, ideally, and to have a connection with the things that we're reading about.
Yeah, and perhaps read wherever you want to get featured. Read the headlines, read the style of the article, see how long or short it is to get an idea of how you can craft it. And if you haven't already, if you're watching this, put a Google alert on anything in your industry so that you can see what's trending, what news stories are out there, and see if you can repurpose it and be inspired, or kind of just share it as the industry leader in your game, and just see how that story is, and just start looking at the news differently. If anybody uses your sector words or your buzzwords or whatever, you see what that story is about, and you'll see it's not about the actual company and how to contact them. It's the story behind it.
Yeah. And it does make a big difference what publication it's in, as you said. So you're right, for one publication is be quite a different style to another publication. So I always recommend people get a copy of the paper or the magazine and actually read. A lot of people don't do that. They just go, I'll send this out to all newspapers. But, if you write for the Telegraph or the Financial Times, that's very, very different to writing for the Sun.
Absolutely. But also, don't feel you always have to write the press release. I've interviewed, recently I interviewed a freelance journalist that has written for the Times and for the Guardian Online. And she said, look, we're the journalists. We write the stories. We can spot if it's a good story. She said, you just summarize it in less characters of a tweet. We're busy. We want to get to the point. And we're like, hallelujah, this is great. We can just write the headline. It's like any email marketing, John, that I know you teach your community. It's grabbing their attention. It's making sure it's like when you write the book, it's the headline of the book. And, it's that opening paragraph, isn't it? You've got to get them on page one. It's a very similar philosophy. So you should be able to summarize your story in just in a few characters less than what you would put in a tweet, and the journalist will be able to tell if it's a great story.
Yeah. And the third thing we were talking about earlier was that you said something about taking the right time to connect to the right kind of journalist. What did you mean by that?
I think this is where, when I first started out, so I've been helping businesses now since 2012 do their own PR. But prior to that, I was a businesswoman trying to do my own PR, and I just thought you'd write a press release and you'd send it into a news desk. So if you go to, whether you want to be in Men's Health or Psychologist magazine, or you go to your local, BBC station, you'll see there's perhaps like a news desk email that you can send us your story, that they send in. But what you want to try and do is take the time. So, for example, like the Guardian or the Telegraph will probably have 100 to 150 journalists working there. The trade press will be a lot smaller. The regionals will be a lot smaller. But take the time to find out, right, who's the finance editor? Who's the health writer? Who's the freelance journalist? Who specifically writes those articles? Because if you can get your story in front of those people, you've got a greater chance of getting media coverage. And look, we can all Google and spend a few minutes finding out. Just phone them up and just say, if you've got a health writer, you've got a business editor, if you've got anyone that looks after SMEs or property, just take the time to do that. Or what we do, we actually have a media database, so our clients can actually search by what they write about, and it makes all the difference. The open rates, because that journalist is interested in that story. Whereas if it goes to the news desk, it just literally sits there, and you're lucky if it gets looked at. And also I've interviewed lots of editors of newspapers, and one editor of the Coventry Evening Telegraph told me at the time, this was quite a few years back now, really said to me, if people can't be bothered to find out who I am, that I'm the editor, and to address it to me, then I can't be bothered to read their press release. I'm like, all right, okay. But it's a fair comment, isn't it, really? It's like when we get spam emails, isn't it, John, through somehow they've got hold of us and they haven't taken the time to just do their due diligence,
It's insulting. I get emails or contacts on LinkedIn that go, would you like to create a business you love? Just when I'm like, I wrote the book on this. Come on. It's like, at least look at my profile or something.
Yeah.
So I must be even worse if you're a journalist and you're busy. And the other thing people have to bear in mind, particularly if you're beginning an entrepreneur, you haven't quite discovered the value of time yet, which is sometimes the case at the beginning before you get really busy, is that you have to realize how busy journalists are. They're not paid fantastically well, and they have to churn out an awful lot of content. And so speed is really important. You've got to kind of hand it to them in a way where they instantly get it. That you've got to have done the thinking work for them to say, like, this will interest you in this kind of format, and here's how to contact me straight away and answer the phone when they do.
Yeah, and you made a great point. You're saying that they have to churn the stories out. I was interviewing again another freelance journalist, and she was saying to me, with the journalism that we have to do, and I went, pardon? She went, your journalism. She went, we have to churn, we call it journalism because they're having to churn the stories out. I went, because I just said, do you mean journalism? She went, no, journalism. I'm like, oh my God, because they're under so much pressure. So someone that used to write as a business editor for a regional newspaper now is not just the business editor, they write the online version. And then they also have to be the social media reporter as well. So they do the Facebook Lives. So their jobs are so much busier than they used to be, like you say. And so help them out as much as you can. Be time specific, be topical, get to the point and put all your details there. Absolutely.
And I think that also applies when they call you, because if you do start to get good at this, then people will start calling you. And I always make a point of, if a journalist calls you or emails you, you have to get back right away. I used to have a special email address for press, which basically texted me as well as emailed me, because you could set that up on my email account, so that I would see it absolutely immediately, even if I was on holiday or something, because that's the only... because what they'll do is they'll call all their contacts until they get a story, won't they?
It's exactly that. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And if you're an expert and you put yourself forward, and sometimes you don't actually need a press release, you don't actually need a story. You can actually just put yourself forward to say, I'm an expert in this. These are the topics I can talk about. Let me know if you'd like to connect or to use my details, because they will keep you, because they want news sources all the time. So don't always think you have to straight away have a story. You can literally just connect and position yourself almost as the influencer and the expert.
You do see increasingly, because of journalism, as you described, I love that word, I'm going to use it all the time now. Because of journalism, people will get their press releases reproduced, if they write a good one that's ready to use, almost verbatim, if that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if it's written well and it's topical to their audience and it's timely, of course they will. Absolutely. They will love you if the ideal written piece is just dropped in their lap. Absolutely. And that's why PR agencies do great jobs. I'm not here to say, don't use a PR agency. They do fantastic jobs. They're great at writing, and they know the sector, they know this style that they're writing, but obviously it costs a lot of money. So what we're just doing is giving you the tips that they've learned over the years and their expertise, to say you can do this too.
And are there any other dirty little secrets of journalism that don't get mentioned in public, but perhaps we should know?
Well, there's absolutely loads. I think it's just, there's national celebration days that you can ride off the back of. If there's a national celebration day out there, just Google national celebration days. We've got in our Media Matchmaker Club, there's over 400 of them that you can download for free. So there's all that, ride off the back of something that's already created. You don't always have to reinvent the wheel. These days have been, and help the journalists. Oh, did you know it was Emotional Mental Health Awareness Week? No, we didn't realise that, So, we can talk about it. So make it easy for yourself. There's journal requests. The journalists are using the hashtag journal request on Twitter. Go out and check that out. You'll see there's a lot of spam. Again, we put it free in our Facebook group, because it's just lots of ways that can help people, but it's just having the confidence. Provide them with a bio, provide them with if you're going to do an interview, like you said, John, get ready for the interview, send them a story. They might say, well, send me a bio, to get your bio ready in advance. But you'll want to write your bio so they can introduce you at the top of the radio interview. And then at the end, how do we get hold of you? Well, you can get hold of it and give them your website, and maybe saying there's a free download or something if you can. So be as prepared with them as you can, and offer them as much as the preparation in advance. So it obviously saves their time.
And that includes, do you advocate things like having a press kit where people can download your photo and your bio on your website?
Yeah, and we do in the past. Got mixed feelings about this with journalists, but some journalists do like it. Suggest the questions for them as well, in advance, because they don't know. They're not the expert. They're talking to you because you're the expert. The job of you is to be a great source of information. The job of the journalist is to introduce you, to help them out as much as possible. Give them the questions, you can provide them with the answers. They're not always going to use it like that. It's not always going to be that simple. But if you can kind of say, in light of the news that's come out today, here's a topic, here's a few key questions I can help you with if you wanted to debate it or talk about it or suggest a debate, just help them out in the best way you can.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I've never thought of sending the actual questions they could ask, but it's a good idea. And if you do it in the right way, which is not being demanding, you just go, here's some example questions you could ask.
Yes.
Then they're going to see that as helpful, and they might pick and choose out of those things. And don't moan if people introduce you the wrong way if you don't give them the bio. So you have to tell them exactly. Well, maybe not tell them exactly how to introduce yourself, but at least give them all the information they need to introduce you, because journalists will, who are in a hurry, will describe you in the wrong way. And then, I've even had somebody get the name of my book wrong on BBC Radio, and that kind of thing. Although I think she was deliberately trying to avoid saying the word screw. So maybe she read out a subtitle, but I said, yes, in my book, Screw Work, Let's Play. But it does also happen that people just generally get things wrong. And and
often, the producer will just hand something to the presenter, and the presenter hasn't even had a chance to read it in advance. So they're reading it fresh, to help them out as much as you can. But always try and remember, what is it you want to get out of this? So you will always try and have at least a main key message that you're trying to put across. Because as we said, PR is not an ego thing. It's about starting with the end in mind. What are you trying to get out of it? It's almost becoming a politician. but not quite to the point where you completely avoid the question. But what I'm saying is, bring it round to say, actually, I wrote the book because of X, Y, Z, and they can, so always bring it round. If you're an author and you're trying to promote your book, get a key message across, just once, my book has been set up and I've written it exactly for that reason. So come round and have one at least main key message, or have 2 or 3 sub key messages as well that you've got ready to mention when you do the interview. Because what will happen is when you get interviewed, albeit in a journalistic interview for a newspaper or maybe a radio that's live or TV, you're nervous, you forget, and you're so busy answering the question that sometimes you think, I've got to try and somehow kind of work this round so that I get my own key message across. So that's just practice, and it takes time, but definitely bear it in mind.
Yeah, that's good. And practice, as you say, practice makes it better. So maybe the first few things you do don't go that smoothly, but, don't give yourself a hard time.
No, don't, absolutely. And also, sometimes we've all had pasts in business, or some might be starting out in business, so therefore they want to prepare even more, So the journalists aren't out to catch you out, but also they may do their due diligence and kind of question why you feel you're the authority or whatever. So, any skeleton, you might have in your closet, you might want to kind of bring up in advance to yourself and just ask yourself your worst case scenario questions. What is it they could ask me that I'd be uncomfortable at? Be ready to answer that question and become that politician and guide them the way that you want them to. But on the whole, PRs are just so helpful. The journalists are helpful that you're there to help them to reply straight away, to help them with a story, or you can provide them with a story. But the more you can prepare, the better it is.
Yeah. I remember my first radio interview was with Radio Kent or something, and I was on holiday at the time, and I heard that I have this, somebody wanted to talk to me, and I practiced. And what happened is, because I've been writing my first book, I was immersed in the topic, and we were kind of sparring. He was kind of making fun of this idea. He goes, well, we're coming out of recession because it's 2009. This doesn't really work for now. And I go, this is all the more reason why you need to do it now, because so it does help to be really immersed in your topic, and to, I strongly recommend writing a book, because by the time you've written a book, every possible answer, and, you've got quotes and you've got statistics and all sorts of things.
But also not just from the book point of view. I mean, it's not a necessity, but absolutely journalists, like authors that have written books, a lot of the time journalists, if you've not put yourself in front of them first, journalists, if they need an expert, they will go onto somewhere like Amazon and put the title of what they want to talk about and find the author and then approach them. So it does have its place. If you have written a book, absolutely great. If you're thinking of writing one, absolutely perfect, because it will position you. It's more credibility, but PR gives you that credibility as well. Once you've been featured in the Daily Mail or the Telegraph or whatever trade industry magazine, or on radio, you can say as featured in, have a press page. So it kind of takes you up to that next level as well.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah. And as soon as you're in some major publication, then you need to tell people about that. So I was a little bit slow to realize that when I started out. And I go because you're so in it, and you're so okay, well, I did that interview and I survived, so I'm happy. And they go yeah, but if you don't tell people you just on BBC Radio, they don't know.
Absolutely. And you need to leverage it. You need to tell the whole world. And more importantly, while your story is fresh, you need to tell the media you've just been featured in, and would they like the story as well? So capitalize on it without a doubt.
Yeah. I like that. So now you know a lot about this space, because you run a business called what's it called? Media Matchmaker.
So Media Matchmaker is an online resource. It's people can join completely free. They can go to our Facebook group, and basically it's connecting business owners, organisations, entrepreneurs to journalists that are looking for help with stories. So we connect to journalists that want stories for articles, expert comments, and stories across TV, radio, and print. So you can join, and there's not just all the PR training. You've got access to the journalists as well. And what we've done is we put different media pass options. So you can have a free media pass, or you can then upgrade to a VIP media pass. And what that actually does is give you access to the journalists, so that, when we interview a journalist, so I'm interviewing a BBC Radio 2 journalists that's works in the afternoon, and she's going to be sharing how you can kind of approach her with her story, what to do, what not to do, and then you can pitch your story to her as well. And then we've got a talk sport radio producer and presenter. So you're kind of getting a lot closer to the journalists. And then we have an Access All Areas Media Pass where you have your own media database. So you can send unlimited targeted emails and press releases to the health correspondents, the business editors. You can literally search by sector. So I'm all about just inspiring you and helping you to connect you to journalists. So anybody that's got a business that wants a profile raising, or just wants some PR, hopefully Media Matchmaker will be able to help you.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. And the website's mediamatchmaker.co.uk.
Yeah, and they can join for free. They can actually upgrade to a VIP Media Pass free for 30 days because I'm really a big believer of try it first, access everything, all the training and everything we've talked about. There's press release templates in there. There's bio sheets. You can download it all, have access to it, and hopefully you'll carry on with the membership with me. But if you don't want to, it's no problem at all.
I like the sound of that. I think I might join. So just to finish, give us an example. Have you seen a press release recently where you thought, okay, it might be somebody within your community. You thought, okay, they really got that right. Is there a nice story of somebody who really got a great pitch?
There's a lovely story I saw on Saturday, actually. So I'm helping it. So it's really fresh. And they didn't know, they didn't make the connection, which is odd. So I was talking, she saw me speaking. I was talking about National Celebration Days. And they've got a bakery. So it's a family business. And the husband's just had a back operation. Anyway, the daughter's now coming in and helping. And they create sourdough. They want to really champion sourdough. And it's National Sourdough Month, which is just bizarre. And she said, I think I'm going to get started with this in October. I went, are you mad? It's September. It's National Sourdough Month. Now is a great story. Your daughter's come into the business because your husband's hurt his back. She's doing all the creative side to the top of the loaves of the bread. It was a beautiful story and how sourdough is like exploding and doing. And I could see the story in a local regional TV channel because you could see how they picture it because TV is very different. You've got to think in pictures. So you could see how they're making the bread, how it's going into the van, how the customers come in and pay for it, how the husband's sitting at home with his back injury. It made a really lovely community story. So that's the emotional connection. It wasn't really about the bakery and the sour bread. It was the story behind it. So there's hopefully an example for you. It's completely fresh.
Yes, I often quote client of mine, Sally, who did natural skin cream. She's still doing it now. Shea Alchemy is her business. And she got loads of press for the fact that she started her business over 50. And lots of her friends were helping out, and they're all similar age group or over 60. And so she got press for that, not for the fact that she was making natural skin creams with shea butter in. So anything that gets people interested is worth it. And if you're reading a story about this great natural skin cream or great sourdough bread and you're kind of interested in their challenges of how they make the business work, and then you go like, oh, that's around the corner, I should go and get some bread. So you don't have to shout it in people's faces, do you?
No, absolutely. And it's coming back to that emotional connection again. So no, you don't. And that's a great example of a story.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. So we'll send people off to mediamatchmaker.co.uk, and thanks very much for giving us your time.
Thanks for having me, John.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ideas Lab podcast. Please do subscribe, and if you've enjoyed this episode, it would be great if you could leave us a review. You can get links and details of everything mentioned in the podcast in the show notes, along with photos and video clips from many of our episodes. Just go to theideaslab.org/podcast.